Hi, my name is Danny Lachmandas, host of the Talent Tap podcast and owner of Quintallo. We help staffing and recruiting agencies generate consistent qualified client opportunities through an AI-powered growth engine that automates outbound qualification and sales enablement. Drop growth in the comments if you want to learn how we can help scale your staffing and recruiting agency. Today with us, we have Steve Acho, Vice President Managing Solstice Consulting Group, author, and athlete. How are you doing today, Steve?
Doing great, thanks. A little cold here in Detroit. It's below zero, so happy to be inside and cozy and talking to you.
Yeah, well, I'm in Nashville and we have 8 to 12 inches of snow coming this weekend, and
That's not
Nashville
normal
does
for
not get
Nashville.
snow like that very often. Yeah, so I just bought a bunch of food, stocked the fridge up. Hopefully
You're going to
we'll
be
be good.
hibernating for a few days,
That's
right?
how it is in Nashville.
Yeah,
Yeah, today's topic is going to be how AI is redefining the recruiter's role in 2026. Could you give me a little bit about your background and how you started and how you came to be doing what you are today?
sure. Well, with regards to this IT staffing, I've been in a lot of different businesses. I've had my own for about 25 years. Before that, I worked for Ford Motor Company as a consultant, and I lived in Japan for about 4 years. And I worked in an IT department for probably 4 years, 5 years, and ended up project managing the implementation of a global big thing that Ford Motor Company was doing. And so I did that in Asia Pacific because I had Japanese contacts and language and everything else, and ended up flying all over. And I've never been the technical person, but I've learned like the business side of IT enough to understand, how things get done and project managed, and I've had enough experience to see what works and what doesn't, and in terms of teams and how you build them. And more recently, for about the last 10 years, I've been running Solstice Consulting Group, which is my business partner Elizabeth Newbold started that company before I met her, and she brought me in. So she's really the brilliant one. She's the one that everybody wants to have her consult, right? So she's the bank for the company and very smart businesswoman, and also trading her time with General Motors and Apple and Chevron and some big names, and we've been doing federal government projects, IT projects over the last about 4 years. So I've been in that space, and because I didn't come from being an actual technical person, or really, I was never like recruiting. Learn about that. That's what you do, right? You find out what the client needs, you find a match. So I think it's a good thing that I came at it as a business person with fresh eyes. I wasn't, when you're in an industry your whole life, you basically know how that industry works, right? So you do, like, what kind of sales things do you do when you're in automotive? You go to trade shows and it's like everyone does the same stuff, and they just try and say, we do the same as them, but we're better or we're cheaper or whatever it is. And so when I came into recruiting, I was just doing it like everyone said you should do. And I just immediately noticed like a common sense approach rather than what was actually going on. And I ended up writing a book called Why Technology Recruiting is Broken and What to Do About It, because I really wanted to make a dent in the industry around how people are hired. I think at any given moment, there are a bunch of organizations that are absolutely looking for you, for someone. And at any given moment, there are people who are not only available and ready to do the work, but they would actually consider it a great career move. So how awesome to be able to like make those kinds of connections, right?
Yeah, it's actually amazing that you were able to become an author and write a book. That is a huge step, and you did that because of what you saw early on in life, I'm sure, with the staffing and recruiting industry and what you did
For sure.
there.
Well, I did it for a few
It drove
reasons.
drove you to write the book.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, there was a few reasons that I did it. One was that I really did want to make a dent in the world. Like, I think there's a big, and by the way, as technology gets better, and not only am I not anti-technology, I'm the first person on ChatGPT. I'm the first person, like, I want to know the stuff that's out, right? So I embrace technology. I just have always believed that there's a way to use technology to be more human rather than an excuse to be less human and just make it everyone's commoditized and, we kind of filter out the noise, which is real humans who might have something to say. And in any area, there there really are great ways to connect humans for a human conversation as opposed to avoid everybody and have AI do the quote work or the tedious work or and it certainly makes things more efficient. My argument in just about everything is that I think humans live by default in efficiency mode, which is why someone will drive to the gym and get the closest parking space and then walk on the treadmill for an hour when they get inside. And they don't see that as like a paradox, right?
Yeah.
And I probably do too. Like I'm not thinking about that. We're just wired for efficiency. Like here's a space. I'm just going to park. I'm not really thinking about it. But I think when you make something efficient that isn't effective, and technology just what's the great part of it, right? It connects, it automates, it does a bunch of manual stuff that we don't want to do, and it just does it by itself and it doesn't sleep. So many great, things that it does for us. And I always look at it like this. So there's a story of this woman who makes a roast for her family. And she's an ethnic family. And she makes this roast every year at Thanksgiving and Christmas. And she chops off the ends of the roast and throws them away. And her husband sees her do this for years and years and says, "Why do you do that?" And she said, "I actually don't know. Now I'm curious. I'm going to call my mom." So she calls her mom, said, "Why do we chop off the end of the roast?" And she's like, "That was the recipe. Call your grandma." So she calls her grandma and asks the same question. And her grandma says, "Oh, when we first moved to the US, we had a tiny apartment and a tiny oven and the roast didn't fit." And so everyone probably has examples of that, right? In their business and personal life where it's just like, this is just what we do until you question, does it still make sense to do it this way? And a lot of times you find at one point in history, it did make sense, but we never questioned it again. And so that analogy, if you follow it through, how great would it be to have this inexpensive, very efficient roast chopper so you can waste 20% of the meat? It's like, that's a ineffective thing to do. Let's not make that more efficient and automated and better, right? And
Yeah.
so I always say, like, go for what's effective and then use the S word. Then say, how do I scale this? But don't give me a story about how you can reach millions of people because that's called spam.
Yeah.
And it's very efficient. How efficient is spam? Oh my God. 1 million people? Surely 1% of them will be hooked into buying my product.
Yeah.
Not thousands of people. Yeah, but you've just pissed off 999,000 people. I'm not a fan of that. And so
Yeah.
that's the lens I was looking through is like, let's do things for good reason. And so I can tell you like my thought process that led to a playbook that we've been using for over 10 years, and it's iterated, and we've pretty much stuck to it for probably the last 4 years because it works great. In our industry, in IT staffing, I have a friend that owns a company that's much, much, much bigger than mine. He's got 4 or 5 locations, and he tells me that he has a 1 out of 10 take rate, which means if a client or clients ask him for, a Java architect or developer or something like that, and they send 10 resumes, they can expect one of them to be interviewed.
Okay.
So
Would
we
that be considered a good
I think that's the
interview
industry
rate?
standard, I
Yeah.
think.
One out of
I have
10.
another friend who does M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and he was looking at a company outside of Detroit. I forgot. I think Illinois, and it was a very big. I mean, $15 million IT and engineering staffing company. And as he did his due diligence, they were bragging that they had 10%. So I don't know if the industry is less than that, but I can tell you that every single time we follow the playbook, 9 out of 10 times, if I send you 10 resumes, you're going to offer 9 people a job. Like we get it right the first time that often. If you follow a certain playbook, which when I explain it to you is going to sound like such common sense, you would say, yeah, what else would you do? Like when I talk to people outside of the world of recruiting, they get it. The light bulb goes off. But when I talk to them about, I guess like they understand that it's different, but they kind of think like, why, of course you do it that way. And I'm like, that's not the way people do it though. And this is the problem. This is why there are
Yeah.
so many that it's such an expensive process to go from sourcing candidates to qualifying them to interviewing them to onboarding them to then finding out that they're not a good fit. And there's a number associated with that, and it's a really big number. And it's usually, I think the latest is if someone quits within 3 months, you've wasted at least 1 year's salary, maybe 1 point from a bad hire. So it makes sense to get it right the first time as much as you can, right? Now we're dealing with humans, so there's always an X factor. There's always, things that come up that aren't exactly quantifiable, but we're dealing with probability. And I think there's a more highly probable way to connect people.
Yeah. It makes sense. Humans tend to overcomplicate things, and like you said, you have a playbook that if you do use this playbook, it's going to
And
work.
it's
And I'm sure that probably simplifies things that other staffing and recruiting agencies may overcomplicate, because it's human nature to overcomplicate things, and that is what I found AI has been doing, is making things more efficient. I do believe the human touch is still needed, especially in an industry like staffing and recruiting, where the human touch, it's a high touch industry. So that is still very much needed. But the AI has helped people become quicker and more efficient, and just it's helped with systems,
yeah,
is
no.
what I have found.
Well, the part about it being human nature to complicate, I agree with that. And I think on top of that, it's also corporate nature, or it seems like it would be obvious for businesses. Because if I'm selling you a $20,000 service and I say, we're going to do these three things, it doesn't sound, it's almost like complicate to profit is one means of selling a service. It's like, I'm going to tell you all this stuff and make up names for them so that it's just so cumbersome for you to do it yourself. You're going to have to hire me because I made it so complicated. But it really doesn't have to be. And the value in asking the right question up front is just a trajectory of, Donald Miller, I think is his name, and he wrote a book called the Story Brand. And he's absolutely brilliant at just having these sound bites and reasons why a company, and big companies make this mistake, is like they're not telling the story right. But let's just start with what's the slogan, right? What do they say? And there are truly right and wrong ways to do that, but he can just look at it and in 10 seconds say, nope, you're making yourself the hero, not the customer. The customer needs to be a hero. Problem needs to be in there, and it needs to be something that they understand, and you're an obvious solution. And everything I'm saying is like, of course, of course, of course, but he's someone that can just look at it and say, Procter and Gamble, what do you say you do? Nope, let's try this. And then their business goes up like 30%. Incredible, right?
Yeah.
So that's
And
so simple.
that's what you want.
So
That's good
simple,
for you
right?
and good for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's totally effective and you get the outcome that you want. So this is what I noticed right away is that everyone, and I think this is true today. We come from a time when job postings were in physical newspapers and people would send physical resumes. And that's a lot of work, right? And so the first thing that happens when you get a lot of work, no matter what format it's in, is how do I make this more efficient, right? And the way that everyone has made it more efficient, even in the digital age when 200 people apply for a job, is how do I disqualify as many people as possible? Well, what I do is I write a job description that says, have 5 years of Oracle. And therefore, you can get some, college intern to just go through all of them. And anyone that has 4.5 years of Oracle is out. Out, 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 out. Let's get 90% of them out. Okay, now let's get it down to just the last handful. Out, out, out. We're going to interview these three. And the problem right from the beginning is that you're calling it a job description, but if your job description says must have a master's in computer science, must have, none of those things describe jobs. They describe attributes or certifications, which could be even worse, that may qualify you for doing the job that you haven't described yet. And so the big turning point for me was just saying, look, like, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to sling a bunch of resumes so you can look at the resume and tell a story about the person that may or may not be true. Everyone does. I do too.
Mhm.
And I don't know what it is, but I have certain biases, right? And some I'm not aware of. For now, let's skip the resume. Let's start with the simplest thing. what are the three things that the people have to do in 6 months, 9 months, 1 year in order to be considered successful? Now, as soon as I say, what do they have to do? Your answer has to start with a verb. And so there's no such thing as, well, they have to have great communication skills. Nope. No one cares what you have. We care what you can do with what you have. What are they going to do with those great communication skills? Oh, they're going to manage a team of 10 developers, five that are domestic and five that are overseas, native English speaking, and in a different time zone. Okay, that gives you an idea of the way that you have to communicate well. And some people will be naturally good at that or have experience, and some won't. And some actually won't want to do it because they want to be the doer, not the manager of things, right? But you haven't told them that. So how can the person on the other end really raise their hand and say, this job's for me, when they haven't described the job, right? So now just that one thing gives me a great idea of whether I could be a good fit. What's the second one? What's the third one? I try to get it down to three. And as soon as you do that, and every sentence starts with a verb, right? So what did I say? Manage a team of developers. Okay, what's the next one? I'm totally making this up. Upgrade and implement our new CRM system and customize it to whatever the spec is. Great. What's the third thing? That's it. Like, that's it. I'm going to say, look forward 6 months to the person's performance review. What will they have done? Not what do they have, right? Now they have 5.5 years of Tableau, Power BI. Okay, who cares? But what will they have accomplished with that that's meaningful to you? And as soon as you do that, now you're setting up a meaningful conversation between two parties where the hiring side isn't just folding their arms and saying, prove to me you can do the work. Let me test your skills on Power BI. It's like, fine, if that's part of your interview process, but like, let's be human first, right? This is what we do. We have a major, we have $100 million project here at the government, and we're going to need, I don't know how many people, but this is the goal of the project in one sentence. We're going to need all these people. Here's where we have skill gaps. Okay, so what do you need those? What are those skill gaps? Well, they're SiteMinder, they're Okta. They start naming all these tools. Great. What do those people have to do with those skills, right? So that we know they're successful. What would make you call me in 6 months and say, Steve, you got it right again? And once we get that, imagine how human the conversation is. Now I'm interviewing for a job and I say, hey, I've spent a lot of time overseas and I've done a lot of work with non-native English speakers, and I've actually become really good at communicating clearly with non-native English speakers. It's like something that I've studied. So I love doing that. I do it anyways. I speak other languages. I've lived in other countries where I was the person that was the non-native speaker, right? So I certainly have empathy about that. Let's talk about the next thing. Well, I've used, I don't know what I mentioned, Power BI. I've used it to, create dashboards and reports on consolidated finances for this kind of a company. Oh, cool. Well, this is what we're using it to do, right? Like, it's just a conversation. We're both kind of auditioning each other to see if it's a good fit. This should be a good career move for me, and this should be a magnificent hire for you. But that conversation is so important because as soon as we have it, even if I say, you know what, I'm probably not the best person for this job. I can do those three things, but my career trajectory is more, I want to be an architect. I want to do the architecting of it. And I think you already have that done by the point that developers and the team leaders come in. And so I'm not a good fit for this, but like, call me if you need an architect to do this. How great is it to build a database of people that you've had a
The
5-minute
relationship.
conversation with, or even email, by the way, right? That they can tell you what they want, would be considered a good career move for them, what kind of work they enjoy doing, and that's meaningful, right? These are all human conversations. So technology either exacerbates a problem or it does a fantastic job of scaling and automating something that is worth scaling and automating. So we use technology to do that. When I post a job, I'll get, let's say, 200 applications. So they get a reply from me automatically that says, thank you for your interest. Here are the three things that you saw. These are the objectives. These are the outcomes in order for you to be successful in this role. So first step, please write one concise sentence under each of these performance outcomes that outlines your most relevant accomplishments in this area. Now, I'm giving people a chance. I'm not weeding anybody out. they're weeding themselves out, right? If they don't do it, which by the way, only 5% do. So if
Yeah, wow.
200 people apply for a job, I'll get 10 emails pretty reliably, and that's
Yeah,
manageable. And some of them will
yeah.
say, "This isn't a good fit for me, but here's what is." Great, great. I'll hit you up. Something comes across my desk, you know?
And you just put that into your database and
Yeah, and that's in
pull
there,
that
right?
out when you find it, yeah.
And again, it's like I think the other reason that people list skills that are required is because they feel like it makes it more fair. So someone can't say, "You hired me," or "You didn't hire me because of whatever," right? Whatever bias you have towards women or minorities or whatever it is, and they wanna feel safe and say, "Nope, we said you have to have 5 years. You only have 4.7. The person we hired has 5 years." Like, they think that they're being more fair by doing that, but doing performance profiles is absolutely, you could talk to the biggest labor attorney in this country and they'll tell you, nope, you can actually evaluate people based on performance and what they've actually accomplished, right? So just starting with that, something as silly as the job description actually describing what they'll do, and it should almost look like an advertisement, I think, right? When you advertise,
Yeah,
you don't say like, this is for everyone, right? You're like, if you want to build the world's first blah, blah, blah and be on this team, like that's going to totally connect with certain people and it's not going to connect with others, which is how it should be. No product is for everyone. No job is for everyone. Right. So like, I hope that people will use technology not to avoid human conversations, but simply to get at better conversations with people who are the right fit, not good people
exactly.
or better people, but just the
Yeah,
right fit, right? If
yeah,
somebody can't, if I'm paying someone $100 an hour for their work and they're representing me at Apple or somewhere else, and they can't take 3 minutes to write a sentence, I don't want to hire them, right? I mean, and if they copy and paste their resume and paragraphs, again, I don't say must have attention to detail. I just test for attention to detail. So all I ask them to do is write one concise sentence and they copied and pasted a paragraph in all purple off of their resume because that's efficient, right? It's just, that's okay. Like you failed that, you're out. So who's in? Let's have a talk, you know? So that's what I hope happens more. As long as
yeah,
people are getting hired, I think we should be able to use technology to be more human and have more human conversations.
yeah. I definitely do agree with that. We've got time for a couple more questions. Let me see what I have here.
I don't have to be as long-winded.
You're fine. I had a whole list of questions and
Man,
you
I'm
ran with
messing
it.
this up.
No, you are fine. While AI automates many tasks, what unique human skills and qualities do you believe will become even more valuable in an AI-driven business environment? I guess you kind of did answer some of that with what you said, but
Are you saying what's left for humans?
yes,
I've been geeking out about AI for 15 years. The moral dilemmas, the technical architecture of it, what could happen. So I've put a lot of thought and reading into this and talked to people who are working on it every day. And I still don't think that I have a responsible answer to that question. I do have a couple of opinions, which may be wrong, but I mean, the first thing is just to say for years, everyone's been saying, well, AI is not going to write a song. AI is not going to be creative. Only humans can be creative. Nope. I've been doing music for 20 some years. I have 60 million streams of my songs on Spotify and everywhere else. I went into one of the AI tools and I gave it a prompt to write a song. In 3 minutes, it wrote a better song than anything I've ever written.
amazing.
An amazing male country voice with amazing backup vocals, and there was no human involved in any of it. And it is really creative. That just came and went, right?
Yeah,
And that was something that people thought, yeah, at the very end, that's going to be maybe they'll be good at it. But here they are doing it, right? I
yeah,
do think that the people that are the safest are nurses, not even doctors or surgeons even. There's, computer aided technology now that does surgery and could be almost completely robotic and we won't need as many of them. But I think nurses who are actually putting needles into people and turning them and doing all that they do and all the
uh-huh,
skills trade, right? Like, I mean, if you have a plumbing problem, Like, I mean, maybe AI will help tell you what to do, but it's not going to fix your plumbing. So you got to actually call a human to come over. But I mean, it's like, think of the internet in the year 2000 and asking like the smartest person, how do you foresee this going? Who could have predicted TikTok as one example, right? Like, we're going to have all this immediate user generated content and the world will see it within seconds or minutes. Like, no one would have thought of that just because there's a client and a server, right? So
It's
I
given
don't even
everyone
feel
the
like I'm
chance to put their
responsible
own
enough
brand
to
out there.
predict. What's that?
It's given everyone a chance to put their own brand out there, where that was not the case 20 years ago.
Sure, yeah. And so I just think because it's like in the beginning of the internet, what everyone did was they took all their paper brochures and they put them online, which is the first step, right? That's good. Like, that's a good first step. We didn't have the bandwidth and you couldn't do cool videos and stuff like that. So it just progressed like this. But you have to remember the trajectory we're on. And this is why, like, my main message is around rapid functional learning. Like, how quickly can you learn how to actually be functional in a skill, not go get a certification because you answered all the questions right, but like actually create something using a software, an AI tool, or create an agent or whatever it is because think about this. I won't even go back to the technology of like telephones and TVs and stuff like that. So very recent, right? It took 7 years for the internet to get 50 million users. ChatGPT got twice that, 100 million users in 8 weeks. That's where we are now. ChatGPT's revenue, this is crazy, went from 2 billion to, oh my gosh, it's either 20, I think it's 20. So it went from 2 billion to 20 billion from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, just
And that's
10x,
the speed. That's the speed that we live in today. And it's
right?
just what I believe when you use AI, always remember you're using the worst version of AI that you will ever use.
What you have today is the worst that you'll ever have,
Yeah.
right?
So, and that is a crazy thing to think about. Your mind can't even comprehend it to the level that it actually is and what it's going to be. There are things that we haven't, couldn't even think of right now that we'll probably see just 5 years from now.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be
Yeah.
faster than that with how things are
Yeah.
going. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
personally overwhelmed because I stay on top of it. And let's say I subscribe to like maybe 3 or 4 emails lists and they're telling me all the new tools and I get to see all the new tools, but I also get, TechCrunch and all the ones that are following the industry and they're like, "Hey, $100 billion valuation." It's like that's Ford Motor Company. And I've never even heard of this company. This
Yeah.
is crazy how fast it's going, right? So
Yeah.
we have to adapt.
Yes, for sure. To close this out, I do have one more question for you. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self about embracing and understanding AI, what would it be?
About AI specifically,
Yeah.
start by doing everything you can. So I'm currently using ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude, those three for different things and testing them out and really getting into it. And I spend an hour a day using AI. So actually use it, right? And that you can read about it, you can learn it, you can take an online course, but like actually using it and looking at how other people are using it, I think just keeps you in the water, right? It keeps you like understanding what's going on because you're an actual user of it. And it really is easy to use, right? It's not like, you don't have to know how to code or anything. You just ask ChatGPT, like, what pizza places are open near me right now that have cauliflower crust? Like, that's just one big long sentence. And if I throw that into Google, it's going to take me 10 minutes to find the answer to that question. If I type it into ChatGPT, it's going to respond like my friend who knows me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for coming on and thanks everyone for listening. I will be dropping Steve's the links to Steve's books in the description. So take a look at those if you're interested in staffing and recruiting. Thanks everyone for listening and we'll catch you on the next podcast.